My daughter's fiancé pushed me in the chest and yelled, "Get lost, you old fool." He didn't know I was her father. At that moment, my daughter came out onto the porch, gave him an icy stare, and said quietly but chillingly, "You're finished." And his perfect life began to crumble right then and there. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. It started on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Sarah's BMW sat crooked in my driveway, one wheel on the grass. That wasn't like her. Sarah was the kind of woman who color-coded her case files and arrived 15 minutes early to every appointment. I watched from my study window as she climbed out, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands, staring at my front door like it might bite. "Come in, honey," I called when she finally rang the bell. Doors open. She stepped inside, and I noticed immediately the tension in her shoulders, the way her purse strap twisted around her fingers. Late afternoon light slanted through the study windows, catching dust motes that danced between us as we hugged. "Coffee?" I asked. "Sure. Yes, coffee would be great." I had been about to offer bourbon, our usual Saturday ritual, but something in her expression made me pivot. In the kitchen, I ground beans while she stood in the doorway, not quite entering, not quite leaving. Back in the study, I cleared blueprints from the corner of my mahogany desk. Another historic renovation project, a crumbling antebellum mansion on Trad Street. Tricky work. Work I loved. Sarah took the coffee but didn't drink, just held the cup, letting steam curl around her face. "So," I said, settling into my leather chair, "what brings you by on a Saturday?" "I wanted to ask you something," she said, her voice tight. "Would it be okay if Brandon joined us for Thanksgiving?" "Of course," I said. "I've been hoping to spend more time with him." "Why wouldn't it be okay?" Her gaze drifted to the window. "I just wanted to make sure. You know how you value our family traditions." "Sarah, he's going to be family soon. I want him to feel welcome here. This is his home, too." She looked back at me then, something flickering behind her eyes. "You always see the best in people. Dad, is there something I should be concerned about?" No, she said quickly. Too quickly. "Just wedding stress. You know how it is. I didn't actually. Her mother and I had married at City Hall with 2 witnesses and dinner at a pizza joint afterward. Best day of my life." But I nodded, took a sip of my own coffee, and let the silence stretch until she filled it. "Next summer," she said. "July, probably. Brandon wants something big. Elegant venue. 200 guests. And what do you want?" She paused, cup halfway to her lips. "I want whatever makes sense." It was a strange answer. Not I want what he wants, or I want something intimate. Just whatever makes sense. Like a calculation, not a dream. When she finally stood to leave, I walked to the door, then followed her out to the driveway. The November air had teeth. I put my hand on her shoulder, meaning to say something reassuring. She leaned into the touch, held there for 3 seconds longer than usual. "Thanks for being so understanding, Dad." "Understanding about what?" She opened her car door. "Just everything. See you Thursday." I watched her back out, correct the angle, and drive away with her usual precision restored. Inside, I moved through the house turning on lights. Old habit. I hated coming home to darkness. The place was too big for one person, really. 3 stories of Charleston single house. 14-foot ceilings. Rooms I barely use anymore. But it was mine. Built in 1847, renovated by me over 15 years. Every floorboard, every window, every piece of crown molding had passed through my hands. I paused in the dining room. Next Thursday, this table would seat 3 instead of 2. Brandon Mitchell. I'd met him twice. Once at the engagement party Sarah threw at her apartment. Once for a quick lunch downtown where he'd spent half the meal on his phone. Real estate developer. Confident. Successful, from what Sarah said. I pulled out my phone and texted her, looking forward to Thursday. It'll be good to really talk. Her response came within seconds. "Me too, Dad. Thank you for understanding." That word again. Understanding. I stared at the message, then set the phone down and returned to my blueprints. But the lines wouldn't focus. Outside my window, the live oak branches kept scratching against the glass. like a warning. Thanksgiving arrived with the smell of rosemary and butter. I'd set the dining table with the good china, white porcelain with delicate blue edging that had belonged to Catherine. I hadn't used it in 3 years. The crystal glasses caught afternoon light from the bay windows, throwing small rainbows across the tablecloth. By 3:30, I'd change into pressed slacks and a charcoal button-down. Check my reflection in the hall mirror. 62 years old, mostly gray, but I still had my hair and most of my teeth. Good enough. The doorbell rang at 4 exactly. Sarah came in first, wearing a burgundy dress I'd never seen before. Behind her, Brandon Mitchell emerged from her BMW like he was stepping onto a stage. Navy suit that probably cost $3,000. Hair styled with product that caught the light. And the watch, I noticed it immediately. A Rolex, the kind you saw in magazine ads featuring yachts and helicopters. Russell, he extended his hand, gripping mine hard enough to make a point. Great to finally have a real conversation. Sarah talks about you constantly. All good things, I hope. Welcome. Come in, please. He moved through my entryway with appraising eyes, taking the restored heart pine floors, the original plasterwork, the curved staircase leading up to the second floor. Beautiful place, he said. Must be worth what? $800,000 in this market? Sarah's hand tightened on her purse strap. I don't really think about it that way, I said. It's home, in the dining room. I carved the turkey with the bone-handled knife my father had given me 40 years ago. Precise cuts, the way he'd taught me. I served Brandon first, guest of honor, and watched him take the plate without a word of thanks. Dinner began civilly enough. We talked about the weather, the traffic on I-26, the Charleston restaurant scene. Then Brandon found his rhythm. I've got a deal pending that'll change everything, he announced, gesturing with his fork. The silver came within an inch of Sarah's wine glass. She caught the stem reflexively, steadied it, set it down carefully. Premium waterfront development. 50 units starting at $1.2 million each. That's ambitious, I said, passing the sweet potato casserole. Do you have the financing in place? Almost there. Banks love me, he grinned, showing perfectly white teeth. And once I land a historic district contract, everything falls into place. I paused, serving spoon in midair. Historic district? I thought you didn't value old architecture. I value money, he laughed. Historic designation means tax credits. Charleston's sitting on untapped potential. These old buildings, sure, they're pretty, but they're not optimized. You could fit 3 modern townhomes where one historic house sits. But then you lose what makes Charleston special, I said, keeping my voice level. The character. The history. Character doesn't pay mortgages. Progress does. Sarah set her fork down. Some things are worth more than profit margins. Brandon reached over and patted her hand like she was a child. Babe, you're too sentimental. That's why you're a lawyer, not a developer. The table went quiet, except for the scrape of silverware on china. I watched Sarah withdraw into herself, shoulders curving inward. She picked at her green beans, moving them around her plate without eating. Brandon filled the silence by talking about his company, Mitchell Properties, and the deals he had lined up for next year. Every sentence included a dollar figure. Every story positioned him as the smartest person in the room. When Sarah tried to mention a preservation case she was working on, he cut her off. Babe, they don't want to hear about work. My jaw tightened. I bit down on a response. Not my place. Not yet. She was 30 years old, a junior partner at a prestigious firm. If she wanted to handle this, she would. Halfway through the meal, Brandon excused himself. Sorry, important email. Work never stops. He wandered into the front parlor, phone in hand. Through the doorway, I could see him scrolling. Not email, social media. Instagram, from the way his thumb moved. Sarah and I cleared plates in silence. In the kitchen, she scraped leftovers into containers without meeting my eyes. He's stressed about the waterfront deal, she said quietly. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. She knew what I was thinking. Brandon is showing his true colors, but the worst is yet to come. Have you ever ignored a red flag in a relationship because you want to see the best in someone? Let me know in the comments. Type, "I saw the signs," if you've been there. Now, let's see what happens when he mistakes me for a stranger. By the time I brought out the pumpkin pie, my patience had worn thin, but I smiled, played the gracious host, poured coffee. Sarah volunteered to cut the dessert in the kitchen, escaping again. Brandon checked his phone again. The screen lit his face in blue-white light. "Sorry," he said without looking up. "Client." I stood, folded my napkin. "No problem. I need to grab my phone from the car myself. Got a message earlier about a Monday meeting. I'll be right back." Brandon nodded, barely registering my words. In the front hall, I reached for my blazer, then stopped. It was cold outside, November night settling in, and the blazer was thin. I opened the closet and grabbed my canvas work jacket instead. Faded khaki, paint stained from job sites, the one I wore when inspecting renovations. Warm, practical. I shrugged into it, pulled the collar up, and stepped outside. The street was darker than I expected. Gas street lamps cast pools of amber light every 30 feet, but between them, shadows pulled thick. My car sat the curb, driver's side facing away. I walked down the brick path, hands in my jacket pockets. Just another figure in old clothes moving to the Charleston evening. Behind me, inside the house, I heard Sarah's voice in the kitchen, humming something while she worked. I reached my car and fished for my keys. The November air smelled like wood smoke and the salt marsh 2 blocks east. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car alarm chirped as someone locked their vehicle. I pulled out my keys, pressed the unlock button. The interior light flickered on, illuminating the empty driver's seat where my phone waited. I was about to close the door when I heard footsteps behind me. Deliberate, confident. The kind of walk that announced ownership of space. "Hey, old man," a voice barked. "Step away from that car." I turned confused. Brandon stood 15 feet away, a leather cigar case in one hand, smoke curling from something expensive between his fingers. The street lamp flickered above us, throwing his face into alternating light and shadow. "Excuse me?" I asked. "The BMW." He gestured with a cigar, ash falling onto the brick sidewalk. "That's my girlfriend's car, and I don't want people like you hanging around it. People like me." I looked down at my canvas jacket, paint stained and faded. Looked back up at his $3,000 suit. I started, "I don't care what you were doing. Move along." The smell of his cigar reached me. Cuban, illegal, expensive. The kind of detail that told you everything about someone's relationship with rules. "You don't understand," I said calmly. He stepped closer, invading the space between us with practiced aggression. "I understand perfectly. You see expensive cars. You get ideas. Now on my watch." My heart kicked harder, not from fear, but from the sheer absurdity of being mistaken for a threat on my own street. "Young man, you're making a mistake. The only mistake is you still standing here." He was 3 feet away now, close enough that I could see the glint of his Rolex catching streetlight, close enough to smell bourbon on his breath, mixing with cigar smoke. I opened my mouth to explain, to tell him who I was, to diffuse this ridiculous confrontation before it escalated further. Then his hands hit my chest. The shove wasn't violent exactly, but it was forceful, deliberate. My shoulders struck the car behind me. My phone slipped from my grip, clattered onto the brick. The sound echoed down the empty street. "You hear me, old fool?" His voice carried the sharp satisfaction of someone asserting dominance. "Get lost before I call security." I steadied myself against the car, breath coming shorter. "There is no security. This is a residential. Then I'll handle it myself." "You want me to handle it?" "Brandon?" One word. Ice cold, cutting through the November air like a blade. He spun toward the voice. I looked past him to the house. Sarah stood at the top of the brick steps, frozen. 2 dessert plates in her hands, my late wife's china, white with delicate blue edging. Her face held an expression I'd never seen before. Not anger. Something colder. Something final. "Sarah, baby," Brandon stammered, his confidence evaporating. There was this guy. He was trying to break in. That's my father. The plates slipped from her hands. They hit the brick steps and exploded into white fragments. The sound punctuated her words like a judge's gavel. Crash. Brandon's face drained of color. Actually drained. I watched the blood leave his cheeks, his lips. Watched him transform from aggressive to desperate in the space between heartbeats. What? No, I didn't. The jacket. I couldn't see. You pushed my father, she said. Her voice remained flat, controlled. The attorney speaking, not the daughter. You called him a fool. I didn't know. How could I know? He was dressed like what, Brandon? She descended one step. Just one. Like someone you can treat like trash? He moved toward the stairs, hands raised in supplication. The cigar still burned between his fingers. He hadn't dropped it, hadn't even noticed he still held it. Please, Sarah, let me explain. Russell, sir, I apologize. I said nothing. Just stood against my car. Phone still on the ground at my feet. Watch him unravel in the flickering street light. You're finished, she said. 2 words delivered with surgical precision. Then she turned. Not quickly, with mechanical precision. 1 foot then the other. She walked back to my front door and disappeared into the house's interior, leaving the door standing open behind her, a gesture of dismissal more powerful than slamming it. Brandon stood paralyzed on the walkway, his mouth opened and closed. Sounds came out, fragments of words. Baby, wait. We can. Russell, sir. I watched him take a step toward the house. Stop. Look back at me. His face held the expression of someone realizing they'd stepped off a cliff and were only now understanding the fall. The November wind picked up. Leaves skittered across the brick. Somewhere down the street, that dog barked again. Brandon turned and walked to his car, a black Mercedes parked behind Sarah's BMW. His movements were mechanical, disconnected. He got in, sat there for 30 seconds, not starting the engine. Then the taillights flared red, and he pulled away from the curb. I watched until his car disappeared around the corner onto Meeting Street. Then I bent down slowly and picked up my phone. The screen had cracked, a spiderweb pattern radiating from the impact point. Inside the house, lights burned warm against the darkness. Broken china littered my front steps. I climbed them carefully, stepping around the fragments of my wife's favorite plates, and went inside to find my daughter. Dawn came gray and cold. I woke at 6. The house silent, except for the old furnace rumbling to life. In the kitchen, I found Sarah sitting at the table wrapped in the plaid blanket from my living room couch, staring at her phone. Her dinner dress from yesterday looked crumpled, slept in. Her eyes were red but dry. I poured coffee without asking, set a mug in front of her, took the chair across from hers. Neither of us spoke. The kitchen clock ticked. How long have you been here? I asked. Since 5, she whispered. I couldn't stay at my place. His toothbrush is in my bathroom. I wrapped my hands around my own mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. You're welcome here as long as you need. I should have seen it sooner. Dad. The signs were there. She pulled a yellow legal pad from her bag, the kind she used for case notes. Dates, locations, witnesses, the attorney building her case. Last month, he screamed at a parking attendant. She said, her voice steady, called him incompetent, stupid, worthless. The man just stood there taking it. I told myself Brandon was stressed about work. That's not stress, I said gently. That's character. I know. I'm an attorney. I deal with abusive personalities constantly. But I made excuses for him because I wanted to believe in who I thought he was. That's human. Honey, you loved who he pretended to be. We moved to my study an hour later. She showed me her timeline. August 15th, rude to a waitress. September 3rd, mock donors at a charity gala. October 10th, the parking attendant incident. November 27th, shove her father in the street. The pattern was clear, escalating. Each incident worse than the last. I need evidence, Sarah said, setting down the legal pad. Documentation of his pattern before I break the engagement publicly. Otherwise, it looks personal, emotional. My firm has high-profile clients who value stability. What kind of evidence? Professional misconduct. business ethics violations. Something that shows this wasn't about one bad night. It's who he is. I leaned back in my chair. Through the window, morning light caught the live oak branches, making shadows dance across my desk. I can help with that, I said. At 2:00 in the afternoon, Brandon's messages started. Sarah's phone buzzed on my desk. She reached for it reflexively. I put my hand over hers. Let me see it first. The screen showed a text, "I'm so sorry." I didn't recognize him in the dark. "Please let me explain." 10 minutes later, "Sarah, answer your phone. We need to talk about this." 20 minutes after that, "You're being unreasonable." It was an honest mistake. By 7:00, there were 23 texts, 14 missed calls. "Listen to this," Sarah said, reading one aloud. "Your father was dressed like a vagrant. How was I supposed to know? Notice he's not apologizing for behavior, just for getting caught. When his 15th call came through, I reached over and held down the power button until the phone went dark. Sarah looked at me, surprised. "You need space to think," I said, "and he needs to understand silence." Relief washed across her face. She nodded. At 7 exactly, I heard a car pull up outside. I moved to the study window, staying back from the glass. Brandon's Mercedes. He climbed out, strode up my walkway with manufactured confidence. Then he was at my door, pressing the bell once, twice, 5 times in rapid succession. I watched him through the sheer curtains. His suit was wrinkled, same clothes as yesterday. He cupped his hands around his face, peering through the sidelight windows. After 5 minutes, his posture changed, shoulders sagging, hands dropping to his sides. He turned, walked halfway down the path, then spun back and kicked the bottom porch step. A small violence. The impact echoed in the quiet street. I watched his taillights disappear, then headed downstairs to my workshop. The basement had been my thinking space for 40 years. Walls lined with blueprints. Every building I designed, every restoration I'd overseen. I cleared my drafting table and pulled out a yellow legal pad. At the top, in careful block letters, Mitchell Properties. My laptop took a moment to boot up. Then I opened the Charleston County Public Records database. Business licenses, property transactions, building permits. Brandon's company had been active for 6 years. 15 development projects completed, 3 currently in progress, and 1 pending, the historic district redevelopment contract, the job he'd mentioned at dinner, the one with tax credits attached, the one he was banking on. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Patricia Coleman. We'd served together on the Historic Preservation Board for 15 years. She answered on the second ring. "Russell? Bit late for a social call. I need your discretion. Patricia, Brandon Mitchell. What's his reputation among the Preservation Board?" Silence for a beat. Then, "That's a young developer bidding on the Historic District project. Russell, between us, there have been complaints. Aggressive behavior in meetings. He treated a city inspector rudely last month. The Historic District contract. I asked, when is that decided? Next week. Board meeting Wednesday. Why are you asking? Just doing some research. Thanks, Patricia." I hung up before she could press further. Next call. James Whitfield, a contact at First Charleston Bank. We'd worked together on commercial loans for restoration projects. "James, quick question. Mitchell Properties. Are they leveraged right now?" His answer came carefully. "Russell, you know I can't discuss client finances." "Hypothetically," I said. A pause. "Hypothetically, most developers at size carry significant debt. Construction loans, property acquisitions. They're usually one deal away from either expansion or trouble. One deal. Third call. Richard Shaw, City Planning Commission. We played golf twice a year. Richard, the Historic District redevelopment. What's the timeline if that contract falls through?" "Falls through? It's practically approved." "Why?" "Humor me." "Well, Richard said if the primary bidder withdrew or was disqualified, we have to restart the process. Rebid. Probably 6 months minimum. The property would sit vacant another year." I made notes, 3 pages of them. By midnight, the picture was clear. Brandon Mitchell had overextended himself. The historic district project was his anchor, the deal that would legitimize his company, provide capital for future development, establish him among Charleston's serious players. Without it, he'd be exposed, vulnerable. I sat back in my chair. The desk lamp cast long shadows across the blueprints pinned to my wall. Buildings I created over 4 decades. Structures that would stand for generations. Tomorrow, I'd start building something different. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. I drove to the waterfront district, parked near the 5 buildings slated for restoration, got out, and walked the perimeter of each structure. I'd done this 1,000 times. Assessing buildings, imagining their futures, the weight distribution, the stress points, where to reinforce, where to tear away what couldn't be saved. Now I was assessing Brandon's future, his structure. The buildings were magnificent, even in decay, brick the color of dried blood, windows that had watched the Civil War. Brandon would have rushed them, stripped what he could sell, covered the rest with cheap modern facades, called it progress. I pulled out my phone, took photos of each building, architectural details, cornices, lintels, the places where original craftsmanship still showed through decades of neglect. Monday morning, I called James Whitfield's office. James, Russell Ross, I'm free for lunch today if you are. I have some investment questions. Always happy to talk business with you. Russell, Palmer's at noon. Palmer's was a Charleston institution. White tablecloths, she crab soup, discreet conversations. I arrived early, claimed the back booth. James showed up promptly at noon. We talked numbers for 30 minutes. Legit business discussion. Then I shifted gears. Speaking of developers, I said casually, what's your assessment of the younger generation? Are they reliable partners? He considered this carefully. Mixed bag, honestly. Some are innovative. Others are overconfident. My daughter mentioned a company. Mitchell Properties. You know them? James' fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly. Why do you ask? Brandon Mitchell was engaged to Sarah. Was engaged. Past tense as of Thursday. His expression shifted concern. Russell, I need to be cautious about client confidentiality. But if your daughter is involved with Mitchell personally, you should know there are professional concerns. What kind of concerns? Reports from contractors about hostile interactions. Inspectors filing complaints. The pattern is consistent. What happened Thursday, I said, looking at him steadily, if you're comfortable sharing, involves me. You? He didn't recognize me. Saw an older man in work clothes and decided I was someone he could push around. Literally push. He put hands on me, shoved me against a car, called me an old fool, on a residential street. At my own home. James sat back, his lunch forgotten. I'm sorry that happened, and I appreciate you sharing it. This aligns with reports we've received, but having testimony from someone I've known 20 years, that carries weight. Does this affect his loan standing? It affects everything, James said quietly. Banks don't just finance projects. We finance people. Character is collateral. If someone treats strangers with contempt, how will they handle financial pressure? We shook hands at the door. Warm, genuine. I watched him leave, knowing I had just pulled the first loose thread of Brandon's sweater. Tuesday morning, Patricia Coleman found an envelope on her desk. Plain white. No return address. Inside, 3 typed pages detailing Brandon's behavior on a September renovation project. Verbal abuse toward workers, unreasonable demands, refusal to pay overtime. Patricia read it twice, then buzzed her assistant. Pull the complete Mitchell Properties file. Everything. By noon, she'd made 6 phone calls. Each one confirmed another detail. At 12:15, she added a note to Mitchell's application file. Additional review required before Wednesday board meeting. Wednesday, board meeting day. The board met at 2 p.m. in City Hall's conference room. Patricia presented findings on 5 applications. When Mitchell Properties came up, she kept her voice neutral. Facts only. Initially promising submission, she said. However, investigation revealed timeline violations and multiple complaints regarding unprofessional conduct. A board member asked, serious enough to disqualify? The committee believes historic preservation requires technical competence and professional reliability. Patricia answered. Respect for process. Respect for people. James Whitfield sat in the back row, present as a bank observer. He said nothing, just took notes. The vote was quick. Unanimous. Mitchell Properties eliminated. Rejection letters went out at 5. Brandon sat in his office, a rented suite in a business park, barely furnished. At 5:07 p.m., the email arrived. Subject: Application decision, Historic District Restoration Project. He read it. Thank you for your interest. Not selected at this time. Concerns regarding professional conduct. He read it 4 times. The words didn't change. He called Kevin Parker immediately, his financial partner. Brandon, I assume you got the news, Kevin said, his voice cold. Kevin, we can fix this. One contract doesn't define a company. It's not the contract. It's you. I heard about Thanksgiving. I heard about how you treat contractors. I don't invest in misunderstandings. I invest in character. Yours is a liability. I'm out. But without your investment, that's your problem now. Mine is over. The call ended. Brandon tried calling back. Voicemail. Blocked. Desperation overtook shock. Russell had connections. Influence. If Sarah asked him, if somehow... He drove to my house, arriving as dusk settled over Charleston. He parked at a curb, the same curb where he'd pushed me 6 days ago. He rang the bell. I opened the door. Russell, Brandon's voice was trembling. Please, I need to talk with you. There's been a terrible mistake with the board decision. No mistake, I said. Come in? No. We'll talk here. If you could just speak to someone, he begged. Use your connections. Explain that Thursday was... Explain what? I interrupted. That you push people you consider beneath you? That you call strangers fools? I apologize. I made a mistake. No, you revealed yourself. My voice was calm, cold. This old fool has 35 years of experience in Charleston. A reputation built on respect. You have what? Ambition? Contempt for people you think don't matter? Brandon's face changed. Understanding arriving slowly, then all at once. You did this, he whispered. The board, the contract. You. I did nothing, I said. I simply let people know who you really are. Your reputation destroyed itself. Please, I'm losing everything. The business, the loan, Sarah. You lost Sarah when you showed her who you are. You lost a contract when your character became known. You lost your partner when he realized a risk. I stepped back, hand on the door. Consequences, Brandon. Not bad luck. Consequences. What am I supposed to do now? Learn, grow, become someone different. But not here. Not with my daughter. Not in my city. I closed the door. Thursday morning. Certified mail arrived at Brandon's apartment. Charleston Regional Bank. Pursuant to Loan Agreement Section 7.3, failure to secure the Historic District Restoration contract triggers immediate repayment clause. Full amount of $450,000 due within 30 calendar days. He sat heavily in his desk chair. He had $17,000. The week that followed was humiliation in slow motion. He sold his office furniture for pennies on the dollar. He sold his truck. By Friday, he'd raised $83,000. Still short by more than $300,000. Saturday afternoon, a courier arrived at Brandon's apartment. An envelope from Sarah's law firm. Inside, the engagement ring in its original box. And a letter. This letter serves as official notice that our engagement is permanently dissolved. Please do not contact me further. Professional. Cold. Final. And for the first time since this began, Brandon sat on the floor of his empty apartment and cried. Not from anger. From understanding what he'd lost. And why. 3 weeks later, Brandon appeared at my door one final time. He was driving a 10-year-old sedan. He wore ordinary clothes. Mr. Ross, he said quietly, may I have 5 minutes? I stepped onto the porch. I came to apologize, he said. Really apologize this time. I don't expect anything. I know everything's gone. But you deserve to hear this. I acted like an arrogant fool. I treated people terribly because I thought I was better than them. You called me out. The whole city did. And everyone was right. I listened without interrupting. I accept your apology, Brandon, I said. Not for your benefit. For mine. Holding anger serves no purpose. Thank you for listening. What happened was a revenge. It was consequence. I see that now. He extended his hand. I shook it. Brief. Formal. Final. He walked down the brick path, got into his old sedan, and drove away. That evening, Sarah came over with Thai takeout, our Wednesday tradition restored. We ate in the kitchen, laughing about her work, about my new project. Brandon came by earlier, I said, apologized, and I accepted it. What happened needed to happen. You never wanted revenge, did you? She asked. Just protection. Protection for you, I smiled. Justice for me. Same thing in the end. We moved to the balcony. Charleston spread below us. City lights twinkling in the December darkness. Thank you, Dad, she whispered, leaning against a railing, for seeing clearly when I couldn't. That's what fathers do. We hold the light steady. I looked at the city below, the buildings standing because their foundations were solid, the streets enduring because they were built to last. Like values, like family, like truth. Yes, I said, let's go in. We walked inside together, closing the balcony door behind us, leaving the past out in the December night where it belonged. Inside, the house was warm. Justice was done. Life continued. And that was enough. If you enjoyed this story about how character is the ultimate currency, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Brandon deserved what happened to him? And click the box on the left to hear another story of justice served cold. Thank you for watching.